seriously upcharged a guy that upcharged my parents. My parents were renovating their house about a year ago, and they needed an electrician to move some lighting fixtures. Generally, I have a friend that's my go-to electrician for stuff like this, but my parents had hired a guy to paint the living room and needed this done quickly. My electrician friend happened to be on vacation, so he wouldn't be able to get out to me until after the painter was already scheduled to come. After referring with a couple of other friends, they recommended an electrician. We are all from the same country and happen to immigrate to the same small town, so people within our culture generally recommend other people from that same country. The electrician comes by for a quote. I never met this individual, and he tells my parents that it's all based on the amount of time it would take, and that he can't give them an exact quote because he doesn't know how much time it's going to take until the job is already started. Just as an aside, I installed Nest cameras for my parents in their living room facing their front door, so we had a good view of the area where the job was being performed. The job takes him an hour, and he literally sat on my couch on his phone for about 5 hours, watching TV, kicking his feet up, waiting for my mom to get home so that he could show her the work is complete, and charge her for like 6 hours for a job that took him about an hour. Which I confirmed how unprofessional his behavior was on my Nest camera. My parents didn't want to cause any friction, so they paid him for the amount of time he charged them. I believe it was like $500 or something that should have really cost like $150 or so. Anyway, the lighting fixtures were installed, he received his check, and went on his merry way. My electrician friend later confirmed that this guy had seriously upcharged my parents. A few months later, I decided to take a side gig selling solar as a 1099 employee. I was making decent money at my existing job, but I had a wide enough network where I could help people around me with generally good solar deals and make some good money for myself on the side. The company I connected with would give me my price on panels, including installation, as well as on the roof if a roofing job was required. My price was extremely good, and the way I made my money was by tacking on my fee at the end, built into the roof price and the per watt price of the panels, plus installation. Much like my parents found the electrician, this same electrician, who I never met before, found me, inquiring about a roofing job. I told him that I don't do standalone roofs, but that I could package something for him, including solar, which would get rid of most of his electricity bill. He said he didn't have the money up front for the roof or the panels, which is fine, cause we can finance. And it started to sound like he was a little bit desperate, as his roof was leaking and he didn't have the capital to fix it. Generally, when I go to a client, I try to keep the price down and make it more desirable for the client. I'd rather make less money than no money. So I generally make around $3,000 to $5,000 per installation, which is a win-win. When I got the call, I thought the guy's name was familiar. And sure enough, it was the electrician who had helped my parents and left a bad taste in my mouth. At this point, I knew he was desperate for a resolution to his roof issue, and I knew he barely spoke any English, so my word was going to be gold. I set up an appointment to go meet up with him in about a week. I knew that I was going to upcharge the crap out of him due to the language barrier he would have with other installers. His desperation, and the fact that he had upcharged my parents, I got the price quote from other installers that said the roof would cost about $10,000 for a strip and re-roof. This was a really good house, as the house was a multi-family unit, and I was expecting the quote to come around $15,000. They also gave me the price on the solar panels, which would be around $15,000. So the price I was looking at for the project was $25,000. Generally, on a good situation like this, I might have called in $29,000 total. Got him a spectacular deal, might have got a couple of grand, and called it a day. But I was thinking, screw this guy. So I adjusted the cost of the roof to $19,000 and the price of the panels to $21,000, half expecting that I would eventually need to come down on the pricing at some point. I went over there to meet up with him, proposed his setup, told him how good the quality of the roofing job would be, which is accurate, and that the solar system would virtually wipe out his electricity bill, and that I would get him set up with a 25-year loan to keep his monthly payment down. He agreed to this, was excited to get his roof done, and really didn't care much about the panels, but they were part of the bundle, and on we went. Once everything was installed, I was paid out on my deal and went to cash my $15,000 check. I went to my parents' house and gave them $1,500 each and explained to them what had happened and how I stumbled upon a $15,000 commission check. Just so it's clear, there is nothing shady about what I did. A little shady. It was way more expensive than it needed to be, and everything was disclosed to him properly. He just paid more than he would have had to, even if he simply shopped around. But at the end of the day, it's well within my right to charge whatever I want. Like it's within the rights of the customer to tell me to screw off. A big chunk of what he paid is covered by incentives, but he still paid way more than typical. Moral of the story: especially for contractors, plumbers, electricians, mechanics, don't screw with people because you're more aware of how things work than they are in a particular field, cause you might end up getting screwed later tenfold. Well, let's not sugarcoat it by saying you're not being shady. You are, but isn't that what pretty much all good pro-revenge stories are built upon? Being a little bit shady to the people who deserve it? My pro-revenge on one of my first bosses. So this is a lengthy one, with a few pieces of essential interruptions for background info, so bear with me. Names have been changed as always. As a kid, I spent my summers at a day camp in my hometown. Even as a camper, I knew I wanted to be a counselor eventually. When I was 15, I got a summer job working as a counselor under Joel, the same director who ran the camp when I was a kid. I was a counselor for one of the younger groups, and things went fantastic. They went so well, in fact, Joel offered me a pretty sweet promotion. I got to teach camp's science class. While this promotion meant a big raise, it also required a lot of outside work, especially before the summer started. I had to plan out lessons that would work with the whole range of ages, would keep the kids involved, and could create teachable moments. I had to make nearly 40 lesson plans, and to top things off, we were transitioning to become an exclusive camp for special needs children. So I needed to work with a specialist to ensure kids with a wide range of disabilities could be involved. So at the age of 16, I made up all these exclusive and educational lesson plans, ordered all the necessary materials, and prepped my room for the year. While it was challenging, I enjoyed what I was doing, loved teaching and working with special needs kids, and was making really good money for my age. My first year as the science teacher went incredibly well. I remember the other campers and I used to dread science class. But now the kids were thrilled to show up for class. And nothing made me happier than seeing kids who usually struggle to learn proudly explain the new concept they learned. I built up amazing relationships with many of the campers, and their parents showed tremendous gratitude, oftentimes hiring me to babysit right after camp and paying handsomely. The summer went off without a hitch, and I was looking forward to another raise and another great summer. Then things changed. Joel, who was always one of my biggest supporters, retired as he was moving to another state, and the woman who worked under him, Nicole, was to take over. A little background on Nicole. She never really seemed to like me, and I tracked it down to the fact that one of the secretaries in her office had filled her ears with some pretty nasty lies. The secretary's son had sold me his Xbox to buy drugs apparently, and his mother was convinced I had traded him drugs for it, or something of the sort. I was good friends with the secretary's daughter, and she confirmed my suspicions that her mother talked a bunch of crap about me to Nicole. Fast forward to a few months before the next summer, and I've confirmed I got the job and the raise that was given annually. At this point, I was making more than people who were a few years older than me, as specialists got a larger annual raise. I sent in new lessons plan to get them reviewed. Once I get the okay, I started to prepare the supplies I needed, only to find out they wanted me to pay for them, and they would pay me back on my first paycheck. I had savings, and I trusted them. I said, no problem. The summer started, and before lunch on the first day, Nicole called me into her office. She proceeded to give me a written warning, as I had allowed the kids to eat their snacks earlier than scheduled. I did so because one of the kids in my lessons group was diabetic and had low blood sugar, and another had behavioral issues that made it impossible for just one kid to have snack time at once. The special needs specialist even agreed with my call. I was completely taken aback, but didn't think too much of it. The next morning, I showed up early to set up for the day, and Nicole called me into her office before I could clock in. She handed me a typed-up note explaining I had been fired for 3 reasons. The first was she claimed I wasn't prompt in responding to emails. The second was that my lesson plans weren't what she wanted. And the third was the issue from the day before regarding snack time. I walked out of her office crying, but didn't even get the chance to say goodbye to my campers. My favorite camper, Ellie, saw me leaving, and the look on her face broke my heart. Her father passed away when she was 2, and her mother always teased me about how Ellie called me her new dad. I got a text later from a coworker that day saying multiple kids, including a few with emotional disabilities, were so upset they went home for the day. On top of this, I had planned for this to be my last summer in my home state. I was headed off to college, and I needed money badly. I got home and explained what happened to my dad, who was shocked to see me. He immediately asked to see my notice of termination and my paycheck, and asked if they had paid me for the supplies. I realized then I had not been paid at all. My dad practices business law, and this is where the revenge begins. As soon as I mentioned I was not paid, his eyes lit up. The next thing we covered was my reasons for firing. I had all the emails from work saved that proved I replied within a day at most to every plan, and that my lessons had been approved by both Nicole and the special needs specialist. My dad went on to explain how they had messed up. First off, they needed to pay me for the time I spent making my lessons up, and for the first day. And by not paying me when I was fired, they could essentially end up owing me a lot more money. This was made even worse by the fact they had not paid me for the materials they now possessed. Also, I was technically employed by the state, and there had to be legitimate reasons to fire me. Not only could I prove the reasons were not legitimate, I apparently had the rights to access all emails sent by my bosses containing my name. Knowing Nicole's secretary had been crap-talking me so much, I figured there was a good chance I would find emails with them crap-talking me if I requested the files. My dad and I spent the afternoon constructing a beautiful legal-looking letter that explained how much I could sue them for not paying me, and how much worse it would be when I proved I was unjustly terminated. I made a few simple requests in the letter for what they could do to avoid such a costly embarrassment. And this is where the plan became pro. I requested 3 things. 1. Full pay for the summer. It was much less than I could have sued for. 2. All the materials for my lessons I had not been paid for. And 3, an apology in front of the campers and a letter explaining my termination in better terms to the parents of campers. I called Nicole early the next morning and asked if I could swing by. She assumed I was coming in for my lesson materials and told me I could do it before or after camp hours. I walked into her office before camp started, handed her the letter, and asked her to read it. I watched as her face turned white. She proceeded to pick up the phone and motioned for me to leave. Less than a week later, I got called in to be told they had accepted my deal. I asked for the apology to be made at the end of the day on Friday, at the end of the first session, and prepared to set my plan into motion. As I had mentioned, I had babysat for quite a few campers and had good relations with plenty of parents as a result, hence why I wanted an email to explain why I wasn't working there anymore. Ella's mom saw me waiting outside the camp and rushed up to me to chat. She told me how sad Ellie was that I had been gone and asked if I could babysit that afternoon as she had some work to do. She did PR work from home. We met up at her place and I asked her if she had some time to chat and set my plan into motion. I had the connection to both campers and parents. I had the lesson plans and the materials. I just needed a spot. So I explained to Ellie's mom that I wanted to continue to teach my science lessons and that I thought I could babysit a group of 10 or so kids at that time in the afternoons after camp, if she was okay with me using her backyard. She was thrilled by the idea and picked up the phone to call a bunch of the mothers and fathers of Ellie's friends. It quickly became a gig where I was charging $10 an hour per kid for up to 10 kids every weekday afternoons for 3 hours. I was making anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 per week on top of the money my old boss had to pay me, and made over $10K in a summer. I only worked 15 hours a week during. Nicole was let go from her position at the end of the year. Well, hopefully it's safe to say now you've got all the money you need moving into college. And thank God she got removed from that position before she dragged the camp's name through the mud any more than she already did. Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up for today. Like usual, if you're new around here and you liked it, consider subscribing, for I strive to do this daily, and some days like today, twice a day. Also, if you really liked it, maybe consider giving it a thumbs up and a share. Anyways, I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.